Hi everyone, hello doctor. The research topic of our group is the multilingual practice of Chinese international students on social media in University Malaya, a study of code switching. And we are going to introduce our research from the research context, objectives, questions, purpose, methodology, and reflection. And now we are going to start. Hi, I'm going to introduce the research context of our pilot research. The first one is the rise of the multilingualism in digital communication. So I'll be discussing the fascinating world of multilingualism in digital communication. In our increasingly connected world, speaking multiple languages online isn't just common. It's a fundamental part of how people interact and build their identities. As you can see, the digital platforms are vibrant spaces where individuals flexibly combine languages to meet their communication needs. A prime example of this is code switching. That is intentionally using multiple languages within a single conversation, whether it's to express identity, build rapport, or simply clarify a point. Users are strategically blending languages. This highlights how digital interactions are dynamic intersections of language, identity, and culture. And the multilingual challenge for Chinese international students in Malaysia. Let's narrow our focus. Chinese international students in Malaysia, the students face a unique linguistic landscape here, very different from their Mandarin dominant environment they're used to. Malaysia's rich mix of Malay, English, and various Chinese dialects presents a complex challenge. So while we often think about the academic language difficulties, less attention has been paid to their informal communication, especially on social media. Yet these informal interactions are crucial for their social integrations, cultural adaptations, and identity negotiation. We know that code switching is a common strategy for Malaysian Chinese speakers to express themselves and manage relationships. Our study aimed to explore this very practice, particularly code switching among Chinese international students in Malaysia digital spaces. And the theoretical foundations. Our research is grounded in the concept of multilingual adaptation, understanding that individual dynamically adjust their languages used to navigate diverse communication contexts. A core mechanism here is code switching, which we define as the deliberate alternation between languages within a single conversation. Code switching isn't a sign of linguistic deficiency. It's a sophisticated strategy serving multiple functions. For instance, it can help select the most precise term, convey emotions, manage conversational flow, or powerfully express the complex transnational identities. English often plays a significant role as a lingua franca in this digital interaction. And while code switching has been extensively studied, its specific pattern among Chinese international students on social media in Malaysia remains largely unemployed. So next, I want to address the theoretical gaps. From a theoretical standpoint, the two key gaps emerge. First of all, we have a framework on multilingual adaptation and code switching that lack empirical groundings, especially in fast-changing multimodal digital spaces. We need clearer insight into how code switching works online for identity, rapport, or clarity. And second, existing model like Romance classification need re-evaluation in this informal context. So we want to know our new online patterns emerging that current series don't capture. And the practical gaps. Practically, the gaps are just as critical. There's little data on how Chinese international students use multilingual strategies on Malaysian platforms like WeChat or Douyin. Without this, we can't fully grasp their communication needs, adaptation strategies, or the integration barrier they face. So this lack is understanding limit how well institution and support service can help. Better insight could lead to a more targeted, effective support.
Okay, that's my part. Research objective, research questions, and research purpose. First one, research objective. We have two research objectives. This study aims to investigate code switching behaviors of Chinese international students from the University of Malaya on WeChat communications. That's Specifically, this research seeks to identify and categorize the type and code switching patterns used by Chinese international students from University Malaya when communicating on WeChat. The second is examine the underlying reasons and motivations that drive Chinese international students from University Malaya to employ code switching strategies in their WeChat. The second research question, we have two research questions. The first is, what are the types of code switching used by Chinese international students on WeChat? Rationale is understanding the specific patterns helps identify how students actually communicate in digital spaces and provide practical insights for language support programs. The second research question is, what are the reasons of Chinese international students using code switching on WeChat? The reason is knowing why students switch language reveals their communication needs and adaptation challenges, informing better support strategies for international student integration. Research purpose, this study investigates how Chinese international students from the University of Malaya use code switching on WeChat to adapt to the multilingual environment in Malaysia. WeChat represents a particularly significant platform for this population as it serves as their primary communication tool, connecting them with both home country networks and local Malaysian academic communities. This study pays special attention to WeChat communication because it is the main platform to connect these Chinese international students with the home network and local communities in Malaysia. Understanding these communication models is helpful for universities to develop more effective language support services and cultural adaptation plans. These findings will directly benefit students, services, devices, educators, and policymakers, and provide evidence-based suggestions to support the language and social integration for Chinese international students in Malaysian higher education environment. That's all. Thank you.
Next part is the methodology. This study adopts a mixed methods approach for two research questions. For the first one, by a descriptive qualitative method based on the Romance code switching classification, it identifies types used by University Malaya Chinese international students on WeChat. Because it is a popular app with social and cross-cultural functions, using their posts and comments. For the second one, an adopted Rabia and Sidki questionnaire distributed via Wen Junxing in a WeChat group explores code switching reasons. Quantitative data from close-ended questions undergoes descriptive statistic analysis, and open-ended responses use qualitative content analysis. So as for the participants, we will use the purposive sampling, as Angerini states that it's an effective approach for the analysis of usage in large-scale social media by the participants. And as for the sampling criteria, we adapted the Angerini's study of choosing the participants for code switching analysis. The first criteria is the students who are Chinese international students in the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics and studied for more than one semester. And the second criteria is the students who are bilingual. The third criteria is a student who have a WeChat account and are regular users of WeChat. And the last criteria is the students who have undergone the improvement of mixed language curriculums across various languages. And as for the sample size, we decide to include 30 Chinese international students aged 22 to 25 doing master degree who have already obtained the IELTS scores of 6.5 with a writing scores of 6.5 or beyond, according to the admission qualification by the faculty, to make sure the participants are competent in both English and Chinese. We choose the sample size because states that in the context of purposive sampling, a sample that is carefully chosen, despite being a limited size, can function as a valid representative of the entire population. As for the instruments, we have two types of instruments. The qualitative instrument consists of the WeChat data corpus, which includes the public posts and the comments from the international students, and the Romance typology, which includes the interstitial switching, and text switching. And as for the quantitative instrument, we have an adapted questionnaire, include the elements of background information, reasons of code switching. It consists of the questions related to identity and social belonging, functional and contextual reasons, and the open-ended questions. As for the research question 1 data collection, inspired by the studies made by the scholars, the qualitative data of the research question 1 will be collected within the defined 2 weeks. From June the 2nd to June 16, the data will include the WeChat post comments by the selected participants because the source is publicly accessible on WeChat compared with the personal dialogues, and will then be transcribed textually for the data analysis procedure. And there is a data deduction procedure because not all the collected posts and comments contain the code switching features, and the focus of the study is only on the posts and comments that contains the code switching. And for the research question 2, data collection, the questionnaire will be completed through the 问卷 platform and will be distributed to the respondents in the WeChat group, in which the selected Chinese international students are required to join. And the duration will last for 2 weeks. Both the quantitative data from the closed-ended questions and the qualitative data from the open-ended questions will be collected and stored through the 问卷 platform. The framework of the research question 1 data analysis is the Romance classification of code switching to categorize the data from the WeChat into types, such as the intersentential switching, which means the mixture of languages within a sentence, and the intersentential switching, which means the switching between the sentences, and the tag switching, which means adding phrase or tags in another languages. And as for the procedure, the posts or comments that contain the code switching will be manually coded, and each code switching instances will be labeled with Romance category. And then the frequency of each code switching type, such as the intersentential switching, and tag switching, will be calculated by means of the Excel to show the most frequently used types of code switching by the Chinese international students. And then the result will be demonstrated by using the Excel to create the video charts or tables. So we will use the descriptive statistical method to analyze the quantitative data from the questionnaire, which is a technique used to organize data into a concise summary by outlining the connections between variables in a sample or population. And as for the procedure, we will use this formula where X is the percentage, Y is the connected responses, and D is the total number of the participants to compute the responses frequencies of each reason for code switching by means of the Excel. This is to ensure the reliability of the findings. And then the frequencies from each reason will be displayed by the 3 line charts. And then the content of the charts will be described textually to figure out the reasons why Chinese international students use code switching on WeChat. And we will use the qualitative content analysis to analyze the qualitative data from the questionnaire, as it is a method for systematic describing the meaning of qualitative material, and it is done by classifying the material as instances of the categories of a coding frame. And the answers from the open-ended questions, such as the opinions about the use of code switching online and the effects of the code switching on linguistic abilities, will be comprehended and labeled into codes. And the codes will be grouped into themes linking to closed-ended items for the thematic categorization. And then the themes will be synthesized into narratives aligned with the statistical trends, and the data will be interpreted and explained and presented in the form of the text. And as for the ethical consideration, the social media data, such as the posts and comments from the WeChat of the Chinese international students, will be redacted to remove identifiers. Questionnaire responses will be stored securely and anonymized in reporting, and participants will be provided with the digital consent after reviewing the study's purpose, voluntary nature, and anonymization procedures, and the participants may withdraw at any time.
Then I will talk about reflection. The first part is research context and the theoretical tools. In the selection of the research context, we mainly consider the representativeness and the practical feasibility. In the end, we decided to study the language use of Chinese students in social media WeChat, mainly because it's close to real life and very typical in multilingual use, and the data is relatively easy to observe and obtain. WeChat, as one of the most active apps for Chinese people's interactive and communication, can provide strong help for this study. After determining the research context, we adopted Romance 3 types of code switching classification and borrowed the questionnaire framework developed by Rabia and Seki to analyze the motivation for use code switching. After selecting those 2 tools, we considered that it's necessary to ensure that there is a high degree of explanatory power between the theory and data. Therefore, it's necessary to constantly adjust the wording of research questions so that they can clearly correspond to the goals of qualitative analysis and the quantitative measurement. And then, Feasibility of data collection. In addition, when discussing the data collection method, we raise some possible problems in data collection. Although the data collection and tool design are basically reasonable, researchers still need to make plans during the implementation process, such as through questionnaire pre-testing, interview supplementation, and other means to improve the validity and the explanatory power of data. And in the questionnaire design, we also realized that the terminology should not be too academic, so that the participants could not fully understand the meaning of the question and should improve the clarity of expression. And then the last part, research method and the conclusion. We use mixed research design. It can bring a more comprehensive perspective, but the integration of qualitative and quantitative data is a challenge. How to make the two parts complement each other and the analytical level is one of the key points we need to continue to consider. Through the conception and the reflection of this research proposal, we not only clarify the research question and the methods passed, but also conducted a systematic analysis in terms of context selection, theoretical tools, and the data feasibility. After entering the formal data collection stage, we will improve the above-mentioned problems to more comprehensively review the multilingual communication patterns and code-switching behaviors used by Chinese students in Malaysia. We believe that this study will not only help enrich the theoretical discussing of multilingual research in the digital space, but also provide valuable empirical reference in cross-cultural education practice. And that is our reference. Thanks for your listening.